All right, so we are officially live. Welcome everybody to our live stream. We have a very special guest that I'm super excited to have on today. But before we get started, I like to start all of our live streams like we do every single time, which is to ask everybody to help us beat social media algorithms by sharing this live stream wherever you can. And also, if you haven't already, subscribe to our YouTube channel and then also to our Twitch channel. And you can follow us on Facebook. And then this live stream and all of our live streams that we've been doing about every other day now are basically turned into podcasts. So you can follow this Mintcast podcast also on Spotify and iTunes. So welcome, everybody. My name is Manar Muhawish Adli. I will be your host today for this Mintcast. Well, it's often said that a picture paints 1,000 words, and images have the ability to move people in ways which words alone cannot. And so that's why I'm so excited to introduce our guest today, world-renowned cartoonist, political cartoonist, Carlos Latuff, who we have the honor at Mint Press to work with. Carlos, thank you so much for joining us today from Brazil.
Thank you very much for calling me, and I'm so glad to be here with you.
Absolutely. Well, it's an honor. Me and you talk every day. We chat every day. We discuss cartoons. We discuss the direction of cartoons. But it's kind of fun to have you on the air today to broadcast this live stream so that people can really get to know you a little bit better. You have been called, been described as, compared to street artist Banksy, resistance, political cartoonist. You name it, you're that guy. And I really believe that's why so many governments fear you. And that's why big tech has censored and targeted a lot of your cartoons, including cartoons that you've done for Mint Press. So let's start just from the very beginning about why and how you became a political cartoonist.
Well, in the beginning, I didn't have the intention of making political stuff. My dream was when I was a child, when I was a teenager, was to work for comics magazines like Mad Magazine or Heavy Metal, etc. Or even Brazilian magazines, but. And that time was very difficult for me to introduce myself to the editors because it was necessary to be introduced by someone, and I didn't have any influential friend who would make this bridge between me and the editor. So I knocked the door of the editors. I show my work, but they have little or no interest on my work. But the only one really interested in my cartoons was the leftist trade union bulletins, the alternative media. They opened the doors to me, and I started to work to them in 1990. And then this contact with trade union, workers union, I started to involve myself with political stuff, political topics, because mostly of the topics in those bulletins were political, and I started to feel myself moved by those topics, and then I decided to become a political cartoonist.
Okay, so sounds like you were, like many independent people, you were told, not rejected, but weren't welcome until you entered the realm of independent media and alternative media, which is where you really found your calling, and you were more accepted for your political cartoons. Talking about when you visited Palestine and how that really influenced and affected your illustrations of one of the worst humanitarian crises in the modern era. Excuse me.
It's interesting. Before to talk about Palestine, it's interesting. In that time, in the 90s, in the beginning of the 90s, we didn't have the internet. So the only way for you to work as a political cartoonist, to have your work seen by editor or news outlet, was a direct contact with the editors, the mainstream media, because the alternative media in that time was very limited. But now with internet, and especially in this new era of internet, the internet 2.0, the social medias, you don't need anymore any editor. You don't need to beg for attention for the mainstream media. The alternative media now I see more strong, more active, especially because they are using in a very smart way the social media. And my trip, speaking about Palestine, my trip to Palestine happened in 1998 after a conversation I had with a head of NGO, human rights NGO in Ramallah, called Palestinian Center for Peace and Democracy. The internet in that time was very new in Brazil, at least in Brazil. And I made contact with them because they had a website, and I contacted them more moved by curiosity, because I didn't have any background on Palestinians, or I used to listen to news, to see news on TV, but I didn't have a more deep knowledge about what was happening in Palestine. And since with the internet, I had the opportunity to talk to someone in Palestine, in an NGO. I decided to send a message, and I made a cartoon and sent to them via fax, not fax.
Back in the day, yeah.
And well, by the way, I love fax. I would love to still use the fax, but unfortunately, I cannot. Fax. Well, I sent a cartoon I made especially for them. It was a Jewish settler shooting the back of Palestinian running, and it was written, "Stop the hunting season, stop the killing of Palestinians." And I made this cartoon and I sent to them via fax, and they say, "Latuff, thank you very much. We are making copies and giving to people here. And if you are able to go to Palestine, we promise to make a tour with you around the occupied territories." So I saved the money. I went to Palestine via Tel Aviv, and I spent around 15 days in Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, Ramallah, Hebron, Jenin, many parts of the West Bank, to see the real situation of Palestinians. And remember, at that time, my intention was to listen to everyone, including the settlers. Because when I was in Hebron, I talked to Palestinian families, and I paid a visit to the Hebrew community of Hebron, something like this. It was a very a large settler community there. And after spending time there and talking to everyone, Palestinian, to settlers, ordinary people in Israel and Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, etc., I had a picture of how the apartheid was imposed to Palestinians. And after witnessing that situation, I decided to come back to Brazil and to support Palestinians the best way I could. And the best way for me as an artist was to make cartoons, exposing the Israeli apartheid, the ethnic cleansing, and also to supporting the Palestinian struggle for self-determination and sovereignty and human rights.
And one of the main characters that you depict in your cartoons about Palestine is Mother Palestine, which you illustrate her in many of the cartoons for Mint Press and for Mondowise, because I know you do a lot of cartoons for Mondowise as well. They do a lot of really incredible work there. Talk to me about the Palestinian women that you met in Palestine and how you have been able to depict them in your cartoons that really challenges that narrative about Palestinian women.
The Mother Palestine, born in a visit I made to a Palestinian refugee camp in Jordan in 2009. I made a visit to a big refugee camp, March in Aller, if I remember well. And a friend of mine who was a photographer in Jordan, he said, I'm going to introduce you to my grandmother. She was expelled from her land a number of times. And when I saw her, she was an old woman, but so strong. And I remember I have a picture of her speaking and waving a cane, you know.
Yeah, like holding it like this.
Yeah. Her name is Mrs. Zarifa, Mrs. Zarifa, her name. And I thought to myself, this woman, it's like Palestine, you know. She's so resilient. She's so strong, so active, you know. And when I saw that woman for the first time, I decided to create this character because it's clear the role of the Palestinian women and the Palestinian struggle. Even in the times of PLO, with the armed struggle, you had many women joining the army movement, you know, and even now in protests in Jerusalem and West Bank, you can see women, you know, fighting with stones, etc., or even, for example, the girl Tamimi, without any weapons, just using her body, her fists, facing off Israeli soldier. So I have no doubt the struggle in Palestine. The women are a very important part of the struggle in Palestine, definitely.
Absolutely. And I think it's so important to recognize that, because Palestinian women have, you know, especially within our mainstream corporate media, have been always depicted as oppressed. You know, the way that Muslim women in general are always depicted as oppressed, cannot speak for themselves. But actually, if you go onto the ground in places like Palestine, or, you know, in Gaza, or even in Yemen, it's the women who are leading the revolutions there. It's the women that are leading the marches. They're the ones using, like you said, their physical bodies to protect their land, to protect their homes. And so it's pretty incredible that you've been able to depict that in your cartoons. Tell me about the reactions and the pushback that you receive for the cartoons, because some of these cartoons are powerful. I don't remember what the name of this woman was, but I believe she was at one point the justice minister, I think. Not just the justice minister. It's a picture of her wearing her dress, and she was welcomed in Brazil, I think, the culture minister. And you did this cartoon about her dress, and it was showing how her dress was basically bombing Gaza. Or even like showing celebrities like Pharrell Williams, his song Happy. He went to perform it in Israel, but you depicted a cartoon of how, he's singing Happy while Israeli bombs are being dropped on people in Gaza. So what kind of pushback have you received for these pretty incredible cartoons?
Just a little detail about this participation of the women, Palestinian women.
Oh, sure.
In the matter of fact, the women are oppressed in Middle East, sure. But not only in Middle East, but also in Middle East. It's a matter to discuss how the women are oppressed everywhere in different levels, but they are. It's so the Arab society is not a section. So it's a different story, different discussion. It's not about the participation of the women in the struggles. It's quite clear, but the way they also need to struggle against, for example, the domestic violence, or
of course,
this kind of things. But not only in the Arab society, but everywhere. In Brazil, for example, we have
yes. Misogyny, domestic violence is a global phenomenon that affects women every single place, every single country, no matter culture, religion. Absolutely, I could not agree more with you.
Exactly. Especially in Brazil, for example, we have a very important rate of aggression and even execution of women by many different reasons. Okay.
The pushback that you've received. Yeah.
When I decide to make cartoons about Palestine, because it's quite impossible to talk about Palestine and not to talk about Israel.
Right.
Even if you are trying to be more in the middle, it's quite impossible.
Right.
Because there is no Palestinian struggle without the Israeli apartheid, Israeli aggression. The two things are connected. So when I started to make cartoons and publish on an alternative media called Independent Media Center, IMC, in the 90s, I started to make the cartoons and started to publish by myself on this platform. And you had many IMCs around the world: IMC Brazil, IMC Switzerland, IMC Israel, etc., New York, etc. And I used to make the cartoons and publish on every IMC around the world. When I published a series of cartoons called I Am Palestinian, We Are All Palestinians, where I compare the plight of Palestinians with other situations in the history. I made, for example, the Palestinians compared to Native Americans, to Black people in South Africa, the Vietnamese in Vietnam War, etc. And the last panel was the Jewish kid with a yellow star before the Warsaw Ghetto, a big wall, and saying, I am Palestinian. All those characters along the history, they say, I am Palestinian. I am Palestinian. This panel in specific was responsible for a reaction from pro-Israel NGO in Switzerland. And for the first time, I was called an anti-Semite for this cartoon. In that time, it was shocking for me because I was never associated to Jew hatred, to any hate speech, nothing like this. I was never called racist, or because my cartoons were never dealing with this kind of topics usually. So for the first time, for making a cartoon comparing the Palestinians and the Jews and the World War II, I was called anti-Semite, a Jew hater. But I didn't step back because I was quite sure I wasn't a racist. And my cartoons dealing with the Palestine-Israel topic has nothing to do with the religion. Of course, religion is part of the discussion because the Zionism has a very important religious ingredient, But of course, in the matter of fact, in the end of the day, it's not about religion. It's not about race. It's about geopolitics. But when they try to associate cartoons critical of Israel as attack to the Jews or Judaism, it's a way to try to mix things in the audience, heads. Try to make this confused for the audience. So after this incident, other incidents also happened. For example, Brian Atinsky is a very good friend of mine, was the Israeli editor of the IMC Israel. And when I published there one of my cartoons about Israel, the police went to his home and confiscated his computer. And in the middle of the night, he was caught with pajamas.
And this was in Brazil or where?
So what?
Where was he? What country was he living in?
He lived in Tel Aviv.
Oh, okay, in Tel Aviv.
In Tel Aviv, and it was the beginning of many incidents where my cartoons were attacked by the pro-Israel lobby present on the social media, on internet in that time, and of course now. So after that, it was very clear to me the price I would have to pay was to be called anti-Semite and Jew hater for making cartoons criticizing Israel. And in the first moment, I was worried. But now, after many incidents involving my cartoons, I learned this is part of a very well-known strategy of the supporters of Israel and the Israeli government itself, a strategy to criminalize any kind of criticism towards Israel and associate this with anti-Semitism, to put a label on every criticism against Israel as anti-Semitism.
Absolutely. It's a huge strategy. And, for a while it was somewhat successful because this anti-Semitism label basically shut down any sort of healthy political discussions and debates surrounding Israeli apartheid and occupation. You've had just like Mint Press, you've been targeted on your own Wikipedia page. You've had articles written about you, basically painting you as this anti-Semite. And I think it's so important to point this out because that's how powerful your cartoons have been in showcasing Israeli apartheid and occupation and its crime that it's committing against Palestinians. They're so strong, they're so successful in depicting that and illustrating the reality that all the people that support Israel have left is to use this anti-Semitism card to shut you down. But you have been so resilient, Carlos, to this. I remember actually when you did a cartoon for Mint Press about Mark Lamont Hill getting silenced from CNN, and also when he got the boot from CNN after he was at the UN and he said, Palestine will be free from the river to the sea. He was targeted, and your cartoons were targeted for depicting him. And another cartoon that was targeted was, I believe, the cartoon you did for Mint Press, where you showed Ilhan Omar also being targeted by the Israel lobby when she brought attention to how Israeli money is influencing politics in the United States. And when she actually shared your cartoon, she got a barrage of tweets at her saying, how could you share this cartoon from this anti-Semite?
Exactly.
It was so ridiculous. I mean, it's like, how about we talk about the real issues, like how powerful the Israel lobby is and how much money they're using to influence policies to support pro-Israel legislation, to silence dissent on college campuses, like, prohibiting any sort of support for BDS, for the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. I mean, it's really ridiculous how the word anti-Semitism has been weaponized to silence dissenters and resistance like yourself. But it's not just Palestine. You have literally stood up to.
But Minar, let me tell you something.
Yeah, go ahead.
Of course, for me, it's clear, as I say, it's a strategy from Israel supporter, advocates. But I think what is more important for those who are being accused of being anti-Semites for supporting the Palestinian rights, it's not to step back. Right. Because if you decide to support Palestinians, you need to be ready for this kind of attacks. And you cannot step back like Mark Ruffalo, for example. Mark Ruffalo had many statements on defense of Palestinians until he decided to tone down the rhetoric about Israel bombing Gaza. So that's the point. You need to be sure what you are doing. You need to make clear your criticism is directed to Israel, to the state of Israel. It's not about the Jew, the Judaism, the religion, race, nothing like this. It's about politics,
right?
And you need to have courage to face this kind of allegations, because when you step back, for example, like Jeremy Corbyn, who, in my humble opinion, it's a coward. You need. I remember, for example, I'm going to tell you something. I remember I made a cartoon for Mondo Vice, where in defense of Jeremy Corbyn, and he was speaking at the podium and about Palestine, and a combat plane driven by Netanyahu was firing missiles, and the missile was written like anti-Semitism allegations or something like this. Okay, someone, as many people around the world used to print my cartoons and take to the protesters. Someone else print this cartoon in UK in a banner and tie to a fence next to a place where Jeremy Corbyn was having a meeting, a party meeting or something like this. Well, the pro-Israel lobby called the police for the banner, and the police went there and removed the banner. It's very nice because Israel, the only democracy in the Middle East, they are always saying, we are defending the freedom of speech, we are defending democracy. But when it comes to criticize Israel, they don't allow you to criticize. Right. They don't allow you to discuss, to debate. They are ready to remove, to silence your voice. And they call the police removed the banner. The press wrote about that. Oh, anti-Semitic banner, anti-Semitic cartoon, as usual. And Jeremy Corbyn, instead to support the banner, support the initiative of that person that tied the banner outside, he tweeted a message saying he was against this anti-Semitic poison. He's a coward. He's a coward. He's always trying to please, not only the Palestinians, but also the lobby. He cannot understand the lobby, no matter what excuse, explanation, apologize he can make. Makes no difference because they want to destroy him.
Right.
And he's a very experienced politician. It's a shame to see this, to see him attacking someone who was supporting him. So that's why it's important to give the example to others, not to step back. You need to stay and say, no, I refuse this kind of label. I acknowledge this is a strategy from Israel, and I fight back this kind of allegations. I will continue to make what I make on behalf of Palestinians.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And if you're going to be in this cause, you need to go all the way and not half-ass the cause, is what you're trying to say. Somebody made a comment that Mark Ruffalo, this is from Abu Haram, Mark Ruffalo is a celebrity he's a Bernie Sanders surrogate. Sorry, I was reading that incorrectly. He's a Bernie Sanders surrogate. So he was just following Bernie Sanders' lead. Mark Ruffalo was following Bernie Sanders' lead when Bernie Sanders made the statement that we need to tone down the rhetoric on Israeli apartheid. I've always seen Bernie as a liberal Zionist, but like just hearing him even say that publicly while he pretends to care and advocate for Palestinian human rights is absolutely ridiculous. You cannot be objective. You cannot be neutral. You cannot tone down the apartheid when Israel is committing genocide.
Especially when you are dropping bombs on civilian animals and killing people. Tone down. Stop the fucking bombs.
Yes, exactly. Let's just stop the genocide, and then we can talk about toning it down.
Exactly. Stop the genocide. Don't ask people to tone down because people are being killed for Christ's sake. So we need to stop. We need to stop dropping bombs, and we need to stop oppressing, brutalizing, torturing, killing people on scores in West Bank and Gaza. And then we can start to talk about tone down. Oh, Jesus Christ. I have no patience for this kind of shit. I'm so sorry. Get my nerves. This kind of things get my nerves.
Well, this is what keeps me and you up at night, Carlos, and a lot of activists and a lot of people who care about these issues. This is what drives us. It boils our blood to the point that we are on air right now talking about this. You're creating these incredible cartoons, but
especially when you already was there, when you saw with your own eyes the situation of Palestinians, when you spend a time in West Bank or even in Gaza and you realize the way Palestinians are being treated along the gates, it's impossible not to be involved. In my case, it's not about reading books or watching movies or videos. I was there. I saw the way they live under the boots of Israeli apartheid. So when you have someone very remarkable like Bernie Sanders saying, uh, let's tone down about Israel. Tone down the rhetoric. Tone down the rhetoric? Are you kidding with me?
It is quite ridiculous, but I want to talk a little bit about some of the other cartoons that you've done. Obviously, what you've done for Palestine is incredible, and I know that Palestinians appreciate all the work that you've done, all the cartoons and illustrations that you've depicted for them. I see your cartoons at like so many protests, Carlos, and you know that. So Palestinians definitely stand with you, Carlos. But it's not just Palestine. You've stood up to governments the world over, including Jair Bolsonaro in Brazil. You've been a target of his direct target of your own government. Let's start with Brazil. Tell us about the political climate in Brazil, because Bolsonaro, for those who don't know, I mean, he basically won in a coup. He didn't really win. He was basically placed as the leader of Brazil. He's a huge Trump supporter. He's been described even to the right of Trump. Yeah. He's a huge pro-Israel ally. His sons are like out in the public wearing Mossad shirts. Talk to me about the Brazilian government and how, the cartoons you've done and how you've been targeted by them.
I've been targeted by so many countries and so many ways. I think I need to move myself to Mars. Bolsonaro is a tragedy. It's someone completely out of mind. Of course, he has a political agenda, a new liberal political agenda of privatizations, of destruction of institutions. He has a political platform, but he's a fascist, definitely. He's a classic fascist. Different from people like Erdogan. Erdogan from Turkey is more smart. He's smarter than Bolsonaro. Bolsonaro is completely stupid, but he managed to kill his own people with this coronavirus pandemic, because since the beginning of this pandemic, Bolsonaro had, like Trump, had a negationist approach. He used to say coronavirus was just a little flu. I don't want to buy the Chinese vaccine. And if people are dying, okay, what can I do? That's the way life goes. This kind of things. He Gatorade people. He organized demonstrations with supporters without masks. He had a very confrontational approach in terms of denying the seriousness of the pandemic. So we have more than 400, and I don't know the updated numbers now, but at least more than 550,000 people killed by this coronavirus. Wow. and counting. And we still have problems with the distribution of the vaccines, especially because the government, because Bolsonaro government, we still have the propagation of fake news about inefficient medicines against coronavirus. I mean, it's a mix of things that are killing people in Brazil. And the first time I saw this, and I think in the whole history of Brazil, we never had this kind of president. We had bad presidents, of course. Mostly of them were bad presidents, but this one, it's responsible for a genocide. I have no doubt about this. And of course, the political cartoonists are facing some, attacks, and the journalists are being attacked. And I have a fellow cartoonist called Arueira. He made a cartoon with a swastika, Bolsonaro and a swastika, and he was threatened to be prosecuted by the government, to apply a law from the times of the Brazilian military dictatorship against him, etc. And it's very important to say now that Netanyahu is out of the Israeli government. Bolsonaro is more isolated because Bolsonaro has a very strong allies, Trump in the United States and Netanyahu in Israel, because they are fascists. The birds of the same flock, the same feather flocks together.
Yeah. Birds of the same feather. Yes.
Yeah. And it's very interesting to highlight this connection between Bolsonaro and the Zionism and the Christian Zionism and
Right.
his support for Israel. He made many trips to Israel. I remember Netanyahu came to Brazil when Bolsonaro was elected, etc. And we have the popular base for the Bolsonaro government is the evangelical Zionists. So the situation is very difficult in Brazil. We now we have a committee of representatives in the Senate making many hearings with former health ministers to investigate the responsibility of the federal government, the Bolsonaro government, in terms of spreading the virus, boycotting the measure, the counter measures for countering the virus, etc. But we in Brazil now are struggling to survive. I keep making my cartoons. I can be prosecuted. I can be arrested because the democracy in Brazil is deteriorating every minute with this government. But the same way I say I won't step back about Palestine, I will say the same about Brazil. I spent the last decades making cartoons, for example, about police brutality, which is a very sensitive topic in Brazil too, and as a topic that can create many problems to you, many even drafts to your life when you talk about. Because in Brazil, to speak about the police brutality is like a taboo, especially because now you have some paramilitary groups in Rio de Janeiro and other parts of the country, like those you have in Mexico and Colombia. And these groups are responsible for killing of politicians like Marielle, in Rio de Janeiro.
Well, in Brazil, the police state targets a lot of the Black Brazilians, right?
Yeah. Because mostly of those police operations are made in favelas, where the majority of population are Black and poor,
Yeah.
And most people, if you see the records, mostly of people killed by police forces in Brazil are Black, definitely. And even the social movement here used to say we also have an extermination process of the Black people and the poor communities by the police. So when you decide, for example, I was forced to go to police departments 3 times along my career for making cartoons about police brutality.
Wow.
So it's very complicated. Well, as you see, Nina, I love to cause troubles. I love to be involved in trouble. Maybe I need a retirement. I need to go to the countryside to have some hens, to have some cows, some horses, to see the winter, getting old with a calm place.
Dream, Carlos. That's the dream, is to retire with cows and chickens and on your own land. But don't retire on us just yet, because you're doing such incredible work.
I'm getting old, So it's time for retirement.
You're not that old, but I want to ask you just 2 more questions. One of them is about Turkey, because you've really ruffled some feathers in Turkey with Erdogan, who really presents himself in the Muslim world as this very like the emperor of the Muslim world, and who fights for the ideals of Islam, when this man is one of the most corrupt individuals in the world, that has armed rebels in Syria, who steals oil from Iraq, who is committing egregious crimes against Kurds, who targets journalists. I mean, I think Turkey is like the worst place for a journalist to exist. I mean, they've in Turkey under Erdogan's rule, more journalists have been imprisoned there than in any other country in the world. And so I'm curious to know, what are the cartoons that you've done that have depicted the corruption of Erdogan in Turkey, and talk about how your cartoons have been actually banned. I mean, journalists have been imprisoned for printing your cartoons in Turkey.
I told you I need a retirement. Well, unfortunately, I was in Turkey in 2010, if I remember well. It's a nice place, nice people. The Turks were nice people, but unfortunately, they are facing a real dictatorship, because no matter you read news about Turkey, and the supporters of Erdogan, they are always saying Turkey is a democracy, but it's not. Definitely, it's not. You have people arrested for holding my cartoons and protested in the streets, or even publishing my cartoons on social media. Mm-hmm. So, if someone now in Istanbul or Ankara or any place in Turkey decide to upload to Facebook or Twitter or Instagram one of my cartoons about Erdogan, it's likely to have the awful visit of the police in his house.
Wow.
And I remember one of those activists, he made a picture of him with his lawyer out of the police station, and saying to me, Latuff, we are now leaving the police station. I was arrested because I was holding one of your cartoons in the street in a protest.
That's not democracy.
And definitely is not democracy. It's not fake democracy. It's a dictatorship. And Erdogan already stated he wants to bring back the times of Ottoman Empire. He wants to be he poses himself as the leader of the Muslims, especially the Sunnis. And I tell you, when you have a politician, no matter if this politician is Muslim or Jewish or Christian or Buddhist, you name it, when you have a politician saying, I represent my religion, I am listening to God, and God told me, keep
Red
yourself.
Red flag. Right. No, I agree. It's a red flag because now they're weaponizing and using religion to push their agenda. Absolutely.
Exactly. And it's very interesting. I'm able to make a parallel between Netanyahu's speech about Hamas and Erdogan's speech about PKK. It's the same. I made a cartoon where Netanyahu is driving by remote control a bomber and say we are cleaning the backyard, our backyard of terrorists. And Erdogan doing the same against the Kurds,
right.
Netanyahu against Hamas and Palestinians, and Erdogan doing the same against Kurds and PKK or any other resistant group, etc. We are cleaning our backyard of terrorists. And in my opinion, Erdogan is the most dangerous person in the whole Middle East because he's always waging war, no matter if and against the Kurds and the Kurdistan territory, in Syria, in Libya, against the Greeks. He tried to make some kind of naval maneuvers in Cyprus. He's always seeking for some front line. He's always seeking for making war in some place. So, what is more regrettable, more sad to see, is how our fellow Palestinians are being fooled by the Erdogan rhetoric. Because remember when Erdogan and Shimon Peres were in a meeting at Davos, remember this?
Mm-hmm.
And there was a discussion between Shimon Peres and Erdogan about Gaza, another attack from West Gaza. And he said, one minute, and he got bothered, he got angry, and left the discussion. And when he arrived in Turkey, he was cheered as the hero of Palestinians.
Yeah.
Just for doing this. Because I remember when that was that attack against the Mavi Marmara, the ship, the vessel of humanitarian aid to Gaza that was intercepted by Israeli commandos, and 9 Turkish citizens were killed. I remember that's quite clear. Erdogan said, "I will lead vessels from the Turkish Navy. I will lead personally Turkish vessels to Gaza to take humanitarian aid to Gaza. I gonna make it myself." Nothing happened. The only thing Erdogan has to offer to Palestinians are empty words.
Exactly.
Because empty words. Behind the curtain, Turkey and Israel are allies. Or sometimes not that under the curtain. Sometimes it's openly allies. Even now, the Turkish government is talking about normalization of relations with Israel, the same way Israel made with Morocco, Sudan, Emirates, Bahrain, etc. So Israel and Turkey, they have military cooperation. They have economic cooperation. And I try to explain this all the time to my Palestinian friends. I made many cartoons about this, but it's impossible to convince them because the religious ingredient blind people. And Erdogan is very smart, and he's always using this ingredient because he knows majority of people in Turkey and even in Palestine, majority of them are Muslims. And when you say, for example, as Erdogan already said, I talk directly to God. I got messages from God. I'm guided by God. It's enough to convince people who are blind by religion that Erdogan is the leader of the Sunni, the leader of the Muslims. He's guided by God, etc. And they are unable to see the reality. Erdogan is an ally of Israel. He gonna make it. He don't plan to make any inch of real support for Palestinians. I mean, real support.
And yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sorry.
No, that's okay. I was just gonna add to your point. Palestinians, not all Palestinians, but a lot of Palestinians and a lot of Muslims, but of course not all Muslims, do fall for the propaganda that comes out of Turkey that Erdogan is some sort of caliphate savior of the Muslim world because of his alignment with the Muslim Brotherhood. Okay, that's one major thing that we have to keep in mind. This Muslim Brotherhood ideology has spread in countries like Egypt, in Syria, and other countries in the Middle East as a form of savior to Muslims, okay, as a form of resistance. But in reality, it actually deep down inside, if you get past all of that propaganda, it is a right-wing ideology, and it's very much influenced by the West. I think people don't really understand that. And the other thing is that I want to mention is that it's not just Erdogan as an individual who's been successful. It's through his means of communication in the Middle East. Turkish soap operas are one of the largest propaganda arms of the state of Turkey. There was a study, I believe it was released maybe 7 years ago, that showed how Turkey improved its image in the Muslim world by broadcasting broadcasting Turkish soap operas. Every single person in the Middle East is addicted to Turkish soap operas, and it depicts Turkish society and the Turkish leadership in a very, very positive light. And also it depicts the Ottoman Empire as a very positive. But the Ottoman Empire, just like any empire throughout world history, has committed egregious human rights abuses and crimes. Just because they were so-called Muslims does not make them saviors or did they bring a lot of good, like a lot of empires did? Yes, they had a lot of inventions and cool things that they brought to society. But they also, at the end of the day, were a military empire. And military empires tend to commit a lot of genocides. And so I just wanted to point out the soap opera aspect. I know we don't talk about that a lot, but that's actually a huge arm of the Turkish propaganda machine.
And let me tell you something. Erdogan is really serious about his support of Palestinians. He can make something very, very simple. Cut diplomatic and military ties and economic ties with Israel. You doesn't need to wage.
Oh, we lost Carlos.
No, it's very simple. You don't need to bomb.
We lost you for about 20 seconds. Can you say that again, Carlos? We lost you for 20 seconds. Go ahead.
I was telling you, it's not necessary to wage a war against Israel or drop bombs in Tel Aviv. Just cut ties, cut diplomatic, economic, and military ties with Israel. That's all. If Erdogan make this, I'm going to start to believe on Erdogan. Otherwise, it's empty rhetoric to please the Palestinians. That's all.
That's absolutely right. And Carlos, we're just running out of time here. We just have like a couple more minutes. Can you talk a little bit about? Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Honestly, me and you could talk for a very long time. We talk like all the time, so we could go on and on. What sort of advice do you give other aspiring cartoonists? Because I know that your cartoons have made waves, and I know there's a lot of people, young people, that are aspiring to become cartoonists, just like you. You've inspired them. What advice do you give them?
Do you want to know? Do you want to know my inspiration?
Say that one more time.
Do you want to know my inspirations?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
I used to say I had basically three inspirations. Louis Hammaker, who was a Belgian cartoonist, if I remember well, from the World War One. He has a very classic style. It's not comical. It's a very serious, very deep, very strong strokes. The drawing is very bold. I like this style, and he was a very acid critical of the Germans in that time, the World War One. Joe Sacco, who's a comics writer, a journalist, who made an extensive comics books on Gaza and Palestine. And Naji Al-Ali, who was a Palestinian, prominent Palestinian political cartoonist assassinated in London. And I hope sometimes people tend to compare me to Naji Al-Ali, and I hope not to have the same fate. But those three artists inspire me a lot. Of course, along my career, I got other inspirations, but these three artists were my main inspiration for political cartoon.
So that's the advice that we give them, is to follow your inspiring fellow artists.
My advice?
Yes. Is that your advice to them, is to follow your inspirations?
It's more like a warning than an advice. It's more like a warning. Watch out. If you want to be a political cartoonist, prepare yourself for the worst. You need to be sure your historical duty as a political cartoonist. To make political cartoons is not like making Japanese manga, Japanese comics, silly stuff. It's something that will hit someone, that will hit the world leaders, the parties, the government. You must understand, in the hands of a cartoonist, this is an AK-47. So you need to be very serious to understand seriously your duty as a political cartoonist when you have this in your hands. You must have a responsibility, and you must have courage. Once you decide to become a political cartoonist, never step back. Okay, nobody is perfect. Sometimes we make mistakes. Be ready for apologize for mistakes, but you need to learn when people are accusing you in a dishonest way, and you need to be prepared, not step back, and to fight back, and to realize your historical duty as a political cartoonist, especially when people are following you and people are using your cartoons in posters and placards. When they are using your cartoons as weapons, you have a responsibility. You have to have courage to face your detractors.
That's such a beautiful, beautiful analogy, Carlos, to say that the power of the pen, your pen, is more powerful than an AK-47, or it is your AK-47.
Messiah.
Absolutely. And it's your missile for peace. Carlos, it's been such an honor doing this live stream with you. I had so much fun. I learned so much from you. I'm sure that our viewers learned so much from you. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, Mina, it was, I call you Miner, but Minar.
Minar, yes, it's okay. It's totally okay.
It was really nice to talk to you. Yes, we worked together for a long time, and it's the first time we are talking we're having a long conversation, and it was really nice to stay here and talking to you, and I'm always at your service. Thank you very much for your kindness, and thank you very much for your efforts as the editor of an alternative media which is fighting daily the lies of the mainstream media. So I'm very glad to work with you, to be with you in this strength, fighting this war against the ignorance. Thank you very much.
That's a huge honor to hear coming from you, Carlos. You're a huge inspiration to us. And we, obviously, for those watching, you can find Carlos Latuff's cartoons on Press News and on Wandowise. And if you follow him on Twitter, he does do cartoons for other independent and alternative media outlets. But that's a wrap for this live stream. We were live on YouTube, on Twitch, and on Facebook. This will be up on our YouTube channel within 24 hours. It is on our Facebook channel. But if you prefer to hear this as a podcast, it will be available on Spotify if you search for Mintcast on Spotify and on iTunes. And finally, if you enjoyed this conversation, we ask that you support us on Patreon if you can follow Mint Press News there. So thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful day.